Video on how to repair the blown out spark plugs you can get on the 5.4 4.6 engines. Excuse my voice, I'm a little sick. So, common problem on these engines that the spark plug thread, they claim, is too short. Not enough threads on there, and the spark plugs would blow out. From what I've read, because it's pretty well documented, these things are older now, the spark plugs just basically work themselves out a little bit over time, and over 100,000 miles, these things will back out, and then poof. So I'm driving along, I started to hear fuff, 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 fuff. Out comes the plug. The very back plug, of course. I ended up jamming it back in. I got a few threads on it. It was enough to drive it home, but I had to fix those threads. You'll read a million things online about how to fix these. Some people will insist you have to use the $400 kit only. Timesert kit. I'm sure it works brilliantly, but to be honest, these trucks are older now. It's not worth spending $400 on a kit or taking it to the thing. It's terrible. So I read some people had some good luck with some standard threaded insert kits. So off to the store I went to buy your $20 spark plug repair kit, which comes with a couple of these threaded inserts. This is a shorter one. It actually came with a longer one that I ended up using in the plug. This two-step tap, which is cool. It basically, this is the spark plug thread. This is the new thread you're going to have for your threaded insert here. So the outside is a new thread. The inside is your new spark plug thread. But you'll notice the step up on that. It's a pretty significant amount of metal between here and there, even if it's aluminum. So I've already driven this truck quite a bit since the repair, so I feel confident making this video. The first thing you want to do is make sure that your piston is pretty close to the top so the valves are closed. But not close enough that the piston's completely high enough, because when you thread this thing in, you don't want that to touch. An easy way to make sure that your piston is at top dead center with the valves closed, because it could be top dead center on the wrong stroke. When you're cranking over, you turn over the crank here. I just put one of the plug packs, the spark plug packs, just left it on top with no spark plug in there, and you can feel it making compression as you come up on the right stroke. I had one of those cheap eBay cameras that fits on your Android phone or whatever that goes into there. You can sort of see, but it's hard to tell if the valve's closed. So, in goes our thing. But this top here, this was too thick. I didn't have a thin enough wall socket that I could fit a socket down the deep spark plug hole. So I welded this little nut on top, so that I could fit like a smaller socket down there, and it worked. This is an arduous process. I'm not going to lie. There's a reason that they have these expensive kits where you drill it out to remove more of the material before you tap it. Basically, I coated this whole thing in, well, not this part, all in just standard grease. I used marine grease. Put it in there, crank it almost to one full revolution, take it out. There's a ton of shavings on there. Right, clean all the shavings off, re-grease it, put it back in, crank it again. And it takes power. I like bruised my head on the socket. Try and get a cheater on there if it's in a better location until you get this thing completely down to the bottom. It is difficult to tell when you've actually reached the bottom, like you've got enough thread in there. And then you're worried the whole time you're going to be hitting the piston with this thing because it's so tight. It feels like you could actually be pushing into the piston. So that's why you want to come up on compression and then back her down a bit, so you have room in there. Once you're pretty sure, and I kept using the inspection camera to go in there to look at the nice clean threads. Once you feel like you've cut enough threads in there right to the bottom, you put on your threaded insert here, which this tacky part of the top here, once you thread this thing in and you just put it on the end of this thing. On you go, precious. Thread it on, right? All the way. Once you've got this thing threaded in, and I used an air gun to blow the chips out, and like a vacuum. I was super paranoid, but actually with the grease on here, got almost all of it. Like I didn't have to vacuum the cylinder much or blow it out. Lots of, they say on the internet, you put a blowgun down there and it'll blow out the stuff. Most I was blowing grease out from the grease, like grease on this puppy. So once you thread that thing in, it'll bottom out on these grippy parts. And they have a tool, this one called the Swedger. I don't know if it makes any sense. It basically expands. It's like a punch. I don't know where it is. Whoops. You put it on the end here. Focus, baby. You put it on the end and it expands these grippies a little bit. I also put, as per lots of other people have used, red Loctite on here as an added thing. It's technically supposed to have a heat range over what the engine will do, so you can Loctite them in there. You definitely, I want Loctite, right? So Loctite this baby, make sure the threads are clean, put it in all the way, right? Use your inspection camera if you're super paranoid like I did. Put in your Swedger, give it a couple of good whacks, which should expand these grippy part to hold. Thread in your spark plug. Actually, you're supposed to give it a couple hours to set. I left it overnight. Put your new spark plug in, torque it. Terrified the whole time that you're doing it. Oh, God, don't break. And then fire it up. And I've driven this thing a lot since then, probably 20 hours on it. And no problem at all. It took me probably, because I was super paranoid about getting metal chips in there, and you don't want to screw this up because you got to change the head if you don't, or take it to a professional shop. It took me probably 6 hours to do this. I'm not kidding. Mine was the furthest most in the very, very back, of course. It was quite hard to reach at. You just take off the intake manifold. I pulled the fuel rail off, all this EGR stuff, right, to get it out of the way, so you have enough room to get that socket in there. It's not an easy repair, but it was $20, right? And $20 fix instead of a ruined motor on a very good otherwise truck. It's not so bad. You can do it. You just got to be patient with it, right? And do it properly. I'm no fancy super mechanic, man. And if I was able to do it, you can do it too. Just be methodic about it. Get a real, this is the wrong, so it came with 3 sizes. This is the short, one of the medium ones. It's actually way longer. I don't actually think that they're, the next year Triton, or not Triton V8, but this V8, they extended the plugs humongously after denying there was a problem for years, denying anyone warranty. On the next model truck, they put double length plugs on, which then got seized in the head. It was his own problem. Pretty much admittance that there was a problem. Or rather that the plugs just worked themselves out over time and people didn't retorque them. I did all new plugs too, right? And then torqued all of them again, slightly over torque, because you don't want this to happen again. Anyways, I didn't actually find a lot of info on how to do this. Usually you just read and people are like, oh yeah, just use a thread insert, and there's done 1,000 of them, and but this was me doing it. A little bit scared, but it worked out pretty well, right? You keep these babies going forever. And if you haven't reached this point yet, go and retorque your plugs. It's really worth the time. Hope you found this video interesting. Whee! And useful. Leave me a comment below on your experience on Spark Plug Blowout.